Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special episode, The Voice of Somaliland, where we dive deep into the aftermath of the recent Somaliland election. My name is Abdurrahim Elmi from Al Khawarizmi Research. This election, or this pivotal moment in the region in Somaliland, was unprecedented. Um, I'm extremely excited to unpack, to talk about the implication and the historical vote that resonate not only across Somaliland, but also through the Horn of Africa and beyond. I'll be joined by Mr. Moustapha Ahmed, who joined us in the previous podcasts, which the link will be provided shortly. He's a researcher who writes about the politics and security of Somaliland and in generally in the Horn of Africa. Moustapha worked with local and international organizations, drawing on his political science and international relationship training. He's currently an early scholar at the United States Institute for Peace, USIP, where he is a researcher in the Taiwan and China engagement in the Horn of Africa. So, what do we know about the recent Somaliland election? On November 13, 2024, presidential elections have drawn widespread acclaim from international observers, further strengthening the case for recognition as an independent state. There was over 100 observers from more than 25 countries, including ambassadors from UK, Denmark, and Norway, monitoring the elections, describing the process as free and peaceful. Their findings underline the Somaliland commitment to democratic values, setting apart on the Horn of Africa and beyond. So, I'm joined by Mr. Moustapha, who really is going to go through the election, the aftermath of the election, someone who lives, who participated at the election, and who will definitely add value. So, Moustapha, thank you so much for joining us, and quite excited to have you and to listen to your input.
Thank you very much, Abdurrahim, and thanks for having me again your podcast. It's extremely important that we have these conversations regarding Somaliland politics and elections. Well, the elections we had was quite interesting in terms of the competition and how the two candidates, there were other candidates as well, but primarily the two main candidates for presidential elections, how they presented the case, and is also quite unique when you see how democracy is exercised in this part of the world, particularly Horn of Africa. This is the fourth president elected in the Barbara election. There were other instances where Somaliland president was selected in an indirect manner, and that was before the constitution was adopted, before the multi-party system was adopted. This election was very also lively. There was a very lively campaign. Each party has one day, so they gather in public squares, in public spaces, presenting their ideas and their programs, but also is a very inclusive in terms of people participating in the elections. And we're going to talk about the details of what this means for these elections and the lessons we learned. Yeah,
definitely. And I think we're going to tap into so many different topics into it. But how did you see the campaign because through what we observed online, we've seen the youth really engaging in the discussion, being part of the campaign, unlike any other presidential election that Somaliland ever encountered. So for somebody on the ground, how did you feel this election? Because a lot of people thought, the aftermath of the election is going to create havoc and a bit of tension, but was completely opposite. So from an observer on the ground, how did you saw the election in terms of public participation?
Well, the public participation with elections is very great and quite positive. For example, if we look at the campaign that happened 3 weeks before the elections, everyone was participating and, as I mentioned, gathered in public squares. There's a social media campaign now, which is quite different how social media was utilized in previous elections. Other actors, for example, TikTokers had a role to play in the campaign. You see parties engaging people who post videos on TikTok and trying to deliver a message through that medium. But we also had a new way of reaching out to media. So you see media platforms in the country hosting different parties, having discussions what they want to present to people. But at the same time, this is where you see most people participating in the campaign and the electoral process is young people and women, and yet they are the least represented when it comes to government positions and power. So you see a bit of a dilemma there, but also it's an active process of participation where people are able to articulate what they want from the candidates. But at the same time, this election, we had 2-year delay of the election. So people quite anticipating and waiting for these elections. I think there are several things we should consider. The media, for example, the media coverage of the campaign, especially the state media, was given a fair share of coverage, including the opposition parties. And this is part of a legal procedures mandated by the Electoral Commission that they sign a media sort of framework where government media and the state media will be used by all parties fairly and equally. So that's one positive thing. The other thing is um, uh, the National Electoral Commission seemed very prepared and very detailed in their operations. For example, they had specific regulation when it comes to the campaign. They had specific regulation when it comes to media coverage. They had a specific regulations on how people conducted themselves in the campaign. So there was instances where people resorted to some sort of a limited violence during nighttime. Young groups from different parties trying to compete for certain things. And they were able to effectively disband or stop the campaigns in certain areas in certain times. So you can see there's a quite awareness and willingness to conduct these elections peacefully.
I think we will discuss and tap into that also, but I just want to go back into the collapse of Kulmiye and former President Moustapha. Do you feel his presidency or his policies had a major impact on his government collapse? Because he faced 6 or 5 to 7 years of some really tough policies. I mean, we could talk about the civil war. We could talk about Nas Anod and some other fringes of some of the issue. But we could talk about his failure to do anything regarding the recognition of Somaliland, and we could talk about the MOU. But there's some other elements that really contributed to his demise. So, what was your thought? Why do you think the voters drifted away from him?
Well, I think first of all, Musa's administration had a mixed legacy when it comes to different policy files. We can talk about in details. I think what led to Kulmiye loses elections primarily had the domestic factors. So one of the factors was the economy and the rising inflation. So and if you talk to people, they would say we're doing better 7 years ago than now in terms of inflation, how things becoming quite expensive, and how government is not adapting policies that's addressing these issues. That's one thing. The elements of, for example, issues related to deteriorating security situations in some parts of the country, particularly the eastern region of Seoul, that also had its, impact. For example, people would say when you came to power, country was more united, had a more united front, but now we are locally, internally divided. We also have some parts of the country not in the hands of the government.
Mm.
So that and absolutely that's something contributed to the demise of Bihi and Kumia by extension. But also there are other things that I believe the government made a significant effort. So, for example, when it comes to international arena, we saw Somaliland deepen ties with actors like the US. We had, the infrastructure development, which is continuation of Kulmiya and the Silanyo, but also the finalization and the development of Berbera corridor and the port. That's a significant aspect. But also we have the relationship we had with Ethiopia, and Musa couldn't see the implementation of that agreement. But now we have the incumbent, the new government to deal with this agreement with Ethiopia and see it succeed. But I think if I just sum up what I said, it was primarily domestic issues that led to his demise and people dissatisfaction. But also, we don't. There's this thing people say we don't have an incumbent coming back to power. So there's this general dissatisfaction with governments ruling, and people want to have an alternative or change in all elections. So yeah.
Yeah. And do you think is the reason why we had a low attendance? Do you feel this attendance was slightly higher from the previous election? What's your vibe? How do you balance? Do you feel the recent election attendance was higher, especially with the demographic of the young people?
I mean, the vote and turnout for these elections was low. Um, More than 1,200,000 people registered
Yeah.
to vote in these elections. We had 600,000 people voted. So it's almost half of the people who registered to vote didn't show up. Globally, there's common explanations for lower turnout, including dissatisfaction with the system. But also, if you talk to people, especially young people, I live in Hargeisa, and I have always have conversations with people, young people in Hargeisa, and one of the things you hear is that there's no underlying change or difference between the candidates. So there's a general dissatisfaction on the party politics. Parties fail to present a solid ideas or solid policies or change that they want to advocate for when they come to power. So that's one thing. Also, um, in many parts of the country, people are dealing with economic hardships, whether because of droughts or poor infrastructure, or people trying to do their daily activities basically. So, but I think also the idea that people mobilize themselves, those especially in the cities, and try to vote and committed to vote. That was also a very good positive um, message that people are still willing to be part of the system in terms of elections, and held the leaders accountable. So
Yeah,
it
to be
was
honest,
it was quite
yeah,
interesting.
to be honest, Mustafa, after the election, I really thought that, and I think it's a good thing. I remember the last election. Maybe you can correct me. There was a slightly ban on the internet during
Yeah,
that pivotal time. But I
yeah.
think in this particular election, you could say that there was a lot of lively discussion on from
Mm.
everywhere regarding the aftermath of the election. Every party was, or at least the supporters from each party were saying, that our party will continue to be in power. So there was a lot of tension in terms of what is going to happen after the election.
Mm.
But
Mm.
according to the international observers, from what we've seen, it was a very is the transparency that took place. And so I really want to take you, if you could maybe explain to our viewers regarding, about the post-election, the resultant announcement, and community concession, because I think that was really a big part of the Somaliland. A lot of people see the Somaliland election as a beacon of hope, especially in that region.
Well, we will agree. For example, this elections, it was very positive sign from the Electoral Commission and the government to not stop the internet. That absence of information, or people, when they don't have a way to know what's going on, this is where the fake news and disinformation happens. So what I saw in this election, they used the internet and the media to find disinformation, update voters, and also let party candidates reach out to their supporters directly. So we had a media team stationed inside the Electoral Commission, and that was quite positive, because there were rumors coming out that something going on in certain polling stations.
Yeah.
The party task force will come to the media inside the commission. I would say, this is not happening. This is truth. This is fake news. So basically, that created and strengthened the sense of trust in the electoral commission, and also people follow what's happening more deeply. When it comes to the Electoral Commission also employed 7,000 people, and mostly they're coming from the universities. And that's quite interesting, because university students are organized by the university in support with the Electoral Commission, and they train how to conduct elections and give them basic understanding how this works. And it's encouraged young people to be part of the system. It also involves them, perhaps not in the political level, in the policy level, but in a practical entry level access to the electoral process. And it's also good thing to see how parties received the results. Somaliland is known to have that culture of accepting results, and because also every leader is looking for a legacy to leave behind. Riala came through elections and was defeated by late Silanyo. Silanyo left, Musa came, and then won elections against Federal. Era conceded, and that's how we continue. I think also Musa wanted to build on that legacy, and actually did. But also the margin, the votes, the difference was quite significant. Era received 64% of the general results announced. That's quite a significant number. And for example, I had concerns if it's a close race, then it might create a room for contestant results, and leading to some sort of delay in announcing the results. But I think there was a commitment from the ruling party, from Musa, to conduct an elections that's very transparent, very clear in terms of responsibilities and what each party is doing. And I think we should give him the credit for holding two elections as very significant.
Yeah.
In 2021, under his government, Somaliland had the parliamentary and local council elections. That's a combined elections, that's two elections combined. And this year we had presidential elections, but also political party elections. We had different political organizations that were contesting to qualify for the national parties. So it's and funded more than 80% by the government's money and the taxpayers' money, which is quite different from what we see in different parts of the region, relying on external support for electoral process and democratization process. Um, and I think also there was this momentum where people had a positive hopes in the elections because things were very transparent. Party leaders already knew how the results would be. That's also quite a positive sign of transparency when people know and predict how things can happen and not kept in the dark. So I think. I think these elections, you mentioned also international observers. We had observers coming from Africa as well, from different countries of Africa. We had parliamentarians from Malawi, from Kenya, political actors involved in different parts in the continent, particularly from South Africa. So it's not only from Western states that's coming to observe the elections, but also it has more attention and interest from different parts of Africa. Yeah.
Mustafa, I just want to go back to what you said earlier, and I guess my question is going to be: what lessons that we learned from these elections? Do you feel the elections remain tribalistically driven? I mean, there's a lot of evidence to say that this election was heavily involved with clan affiliation, and I think that's been part of the Somaliland, roots in terms when it's come to election. You know that the issue of clan favoritism will come in. Do you think
Mm.
will hopefully in the next election, or at least the new administration of Aero will hopefully eradicate that, and the focus eventually will be about policies and manifestos? Because I failed to see by any of the parties during the election what their manifesto is. And I think maybe that's the failure of the media not to uh, push the politicians into their policies. And they've been fueling the issue of social media. And, we have the incident of is that Liban Adala, who is apparently been banned from Somaliland because of his very controversial comments during the election. Um, so I just want to see what do you think of what we learned from this process or this election, Mustafa?
I think that's a very excellent question, and we need to always think of how can we improve what we have now. One of the key things in these elections is the predominant role tribal affiliations or tribal identity played. And it's something utilized by the political actors. It's not the people who want to be divided. It's the candidates and political elite using this identity to mobilize support. Um, and I think one way to fix that is to strengthen the party institution. The way the party is organized is not democratic within the party. The central committees of the party, they don't play a significant role in shaping the discourse and the narrative around the elections. So strengthening party democracy and building strong parties where people are based in terms of the needs. For example, this region needs certain things. How can we voice that within the party framework? Not in a clan way, but in a more party lines. So that's one thing. Second thing, I think it's also important is the role of the media. Like this new government pledged to support media. That's what I'm hearing from the Ministry of Information. But I think we need more policy-oriented change. For example, how they're going to deal with people airing clan narrative on television, on news. How can we stop that? But also, how can we develop our media in a way they can host conversations and dialogues, open debates, clear and research and information-based discussions, and so that's one thing. Media plays a significant
Yeah,
role in perpetuating this narrative of client identity. They have a big role.
yeah,
The other thing I think we need to have is more engagement from civil society organizations. and it's something missing or they're lagging behind when it comes to shaping the discourse around elections. What I mean by civil society role is religious figures, they constitute part of civil society, and non-governmental organizations, they women organizations, youth organizations. I think they can play a big role in voter education, educating people how to vote, the importance of vote. The voter turnout we had is quite disappointed, I would say, given how important these elections were. So we need to mobilize and channel some sort of energy and support towards civil society organizations and yeah, advocating for more engagement. Yeah.
We've got a few minutes left, but I think I'm sure I could squeeze this question for you. Looking at the new President Erro, and he's, I mean, personally, when I looked at him, you know, obviously I've got my own concern regarding whether he had the right charisma to lead a nation like Somaliland. You know, I think for leadership, you're looking for that special person who have that charisma and that character that shows that he's a person of strength. And I don't know. I think the jury's out on that. I haven't really made a judgment of it, but I think what I've heard so far is the way he selected the cabinet. It looks like there is a bit of wise move from him, that he's been very, very clever about the selection of. So I don't know. What's your thought of his new cabinet, and are you optimistic with his new administration?
I am a bit optimistic of new government and the cabinet, but also the leadership of the new president. From what I heard, people close to him, it's someone who likes to lead by consensus, someone who listens, and I think we need that now more than ever. A government that's open, willing to listen to people and act accordingly. From the new cabinet, I think we have new faces, which signals a departure from what we already have. Again, it's the policies and the institutions that matter, not personalities, but also having new faces with new, fresh perspectives and ideas. It's important in the system. The new cabinet we have also is inclusive and representative of all people living in Somaliland. I think that's quite a good signal and departs from what we used to criticize the previous government, saying, "Oh, it's very, it's not including everyone." So, and I think this gives this new government a strong mandate to pursue the changes it wants. One of the major things the new government campaigned for was working in internal cohesion of the country. Even before the elections, that's the rhetoric the Erro and his team presented. And I think that also informs the decision not to let someone like the person you mentioned, Liban, to the country, because it comes against everything that the president campaigned for. And he was clear even before the election, saying anyone who creates divisive narrative in the elections doesn't represent me or the party or where I come from. So I think it's a good signal of what we're going to see in the coming years.
Okay. Now my last question, Moustapha, and it's been such an engaging discussion. Trump recently, or allegedly, said that Somaliland will be recognized. I mean, that's what some of the comment that we've seen online. How do you see this kind of comment, or at least do you feel after this, what we witnessed in terms of a very transparent election, and do you feel in terms of recognition, Somaliland are stepping even closer? And that's my first question. The second one is going to be, it looks like the MEU that former President Moustapha had, it looks like now he's been completely washed away. How do you also observe that? So this is the first question, and maybe you could answer them.
Yeah. When it comes to the news about new Trump administration, possibly or potential recognition of Somaliland, I think there's an element of truth in that. Some key members of his circle are publicly supporting. I think you've seen the bill endorsed by one of the Congress people. So that's one thing. There's a quite strong interest in Somaliland in the United States, and that's been going on since 2020. But I think the relationship was kind of overshadowed by the delay of the elections in 2022 and the conflict in the eastern region of Seoul. Now, with the new government, with a new fresh perspective of seeing things, for example, the new government is saying we're going to pursue diplomacy to address the regional issues. I think it gives a quite good signal to other partners like the US to engage more. I think there's an element of truth of that. We don't have a Trump official saying that publicly, but we do have people close to him, and it kind of also shows how these people in these important key positions in the government will take the Somaliland case. The fact Somalia.
Yeah, sorry, Mustafa, but do you think having a recognition from the United States that will create an international tension, because probably America will have a base there, probably in Berbera. So definitely having a base there for them will be a part of the deal. Do you think that will increase the tension in the region, which has already been quite, volatile region anyway?
I don't think so. I don't subscribe to the idea that recognizing Somalia will create more regional tensions. I think will give Somalia more leverage to be a leader in terms of these issues. And Somalia quite demonstrated willingness to contribute to the regional peace and security without the support of other actors. So I think it will do the opposite.
So if you just answer, I'm running out of time. If you answer the second question now. Regarding
I think the issue of Ethiopia is quite uncertain. I wouldn't say it's completely washed away. Ethiopia hasn't publicly renounced the MOU with Somaliland. But also you haven't clearly mentioned any reference to the MOU in the current declaration that came out. So there's a quite not clear what's going to happen. And I think we will need to see how things will unfold in February next year.
And do you think the current Somaliland administration will follow to pursue the MOU to be implemented?
Yes, they've been quite clear on this. They said we're going to maintain the MOU. We need to also see and engage and review. And also they said, as long as it works for Somali interest, we're going to pursue that. And I think more than once now, Erre and his team expressed a commitment to the deal with Ethiopia. Yeah.
It's been a fantastic discussion, quite lively, Mr. Mustafa, and quite looking forward how this will unfold in the coming years. I think this election really was a testimony for the people of Somaliland that we could move further. And we might belong to Kulmiye or Watani or U'ud, but at the end of the day, it's we should support whatever is going to be at the administration, and hopefully that will be a clear statement for a region that is peaceful and for a region that is looking for a new destiny for themselves. And so I really appreciate it, and thank you so much for having you in our discussion. It's been really great, lively again. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.